So hello everyone. Thank you all for being here. I see we are quite busy. Please do give me a one in the chat to let me know that audio is coming through okay. And yes, oh man, Thaddeus, you've just gone crazy. I need to resize your video. I have no idea what happened. You know what? I'm just going to switch to the two-person view like this, and we fixed it. Hey everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here. And Thaddeus, thank you for joining me tonight. How are you today?
My pleasure. It's good to be on here. It's been a little while. We've both been pretty busy, I think, but it's always good to connect and discuss atheism, discuss these people who just have no beliefs whatsoever and yet spend all of their time arguing in the YouTube comments about what they don't believe in, apparently.
Correct. Before I forget, Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful, safe, happy, blessed Christmas. And yeah, of course, I wish you all a happy new year if I don't see you or speak to you prior to then, although we will be streaming on Thursday. So yeah, I hope you had a happy Christmas, Thaddeus. And if you want to give anyone wishes, I'll give you a moment.
Yeah, well, no one specifically, but Merry Christmas, everyone. We kind of think of December 25th as the end of the Christmas season, but traditionally it's actually the start of the Christmas season, lasting until Epiphany at January 6th. So perfectly appropriate to say Merry Christmas.
Excellent. Yeah, in fact, here in Central and Eastern Europe, Christmas definitely lasts up to January 6th. It's and yeah, and in fact, the Christmas trees stay up until the end of January. So yeah, it's a fairly lengthy season. So Andrew Mott says, I wonder what Lloyd will do next. Lloyd is planning to annoy the secular humanists next, because Lloyd is about to do a detailed series on secular humanism, especially 20th century, early 20th century, well, from the 1920s, late 1920s up to the 1980s, 1990s, to look at secular humanism from the writings and the words of secular humanists, which is, of course, is an atheistic philosophy, an atheistic religion. In fact, secular humanism was begun specifically as a religion, explicitly begun as a religion. And of course, I did tag the holy humanist, Nuria Khan, in that particular show for Thursday, um, because she's a secular humanist, and she has told me more than once that she's not religious. She's a secular humanist because she doesn't believe in religion. She follows secular humanism because it is scientific. Well, we're going to look at all of that in great detail, and hopefully she'll get to watch it. Hopefully she'll learn about the fact that secular humanism actually explicitly, specifically, and legally is religion, because they went to court to have it declared a valid religion. So yeah, that's next. I'll be annoying those people, sadly. Yeah. Okay. So any comment from you, Thaddeus, before we move on?
Nope, ready to go.
Oh yeah. So he never returned as a host, says Lloyd. Your last appearance on Sarah International was really good. Thank you again. Yeah, man. The last two videos, especially this one, man, it seems to have driven these people nuts. Seriously, they're just losing their little minds over my video, and it's crazy. In 3 years, I've invited every single comment troll. Hey, Emmanuel, welcome. I've invited every single comment troll who's ever commented on my videos to stream live with me, to simply do a public stream where we will read through the Sharia and have them talk about it, have them explain where I am wrong, to bring their evidence. Not one has accepted, not a single one. And then, of course, um, when you read through the comments on Al Fadi's channel and others, they never ever actually comment on the content. They don't bring evidence to prove me wrong. They'll go, "Oh, Christianity is based on a bull religion based from Sole Dei from the 12th century, and it's actually not real." You're like, okay, yeah, but are you going to prove that what I've stated here is false? No, because Christians kiss a cross and therefore it's pagan. Um, Never once have they proven me wrong, and never once have they brought evidence. So, cowards, the lot of them. Yeah. So my neighbors made a big party, as always happened in the country. Then they put the music. I couldn't sleep all night. Oh, I'm sorry about your neighbors, man. Um, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry about your neighbors. Yeah, you have neighbors and you have neighbors. Okay, so we've got Dragon. Thank you for being here. Islam Intero Dad, and we have a bunch of regulars. Your Highness, thank you very much. Good to see you. Okay, guys. So let us begin. I'm going to go back to. Okay, so we ended up um, discussing multiple different kinds of atheists, and of course we discussed Hegel. So I'm going to go back one or two slides. We're going to just refresh where we were, and talk about something. So remember, there was this quote from Hegel that I mentioned, and I went to have a look at it. So thank you for, there was someone in the comments, Cogito possibly, who sent this to me. And I did use it verbatim, but I had to go back and check because something was niggling at me, as usually does. And I wanted to get the source of the quote, because when I'm given a quote, I like to find the source of it. So Hegel notoriously maintained that if facts contradict theory, then umso schlimmer für die Fakten, so much worse for the facts. Now, this can be seen as indicative of the paramount arrogance of a philosophy that takes no notice of such trivialities as empirical data. Now, we've seen this. This is definitely something that atheists are guilty of. But this quote, now, apparently scholars have looked for the source of this quote in Hegel's works and have not found it. So it seems that the source of this quote comes from other places. Here's one of them, apparently. This is one of the major sources that apparently this idea of Hegel's philosophy. Now, Hegel's philosophy was obviously trash. Marx believed it. He created the whole idea of the dialectic we've discussed. This is a thesis written, it's called Outlines of Cosmic Philosophy, based on the doctrine of evolution, with criticisms on the positive philosophy. So yeah, this is positive, is obviously Positivism Comte, okay, by John Fisker, MA-LLB, assistant librarian and formerly lecturer on philosophy at Harvard University. So, okay, let's have a quick look at what he says. This is him writing about Hegel. It mistakes words for ideas and ideas for facts. He's talking here about this whole philosophy that Hegel followed. Words are mistaken for ideas and ideas are mistaken for facts. And he says, words are the counters of wise men, but are the money of fools. And he says, words are certainly the money of Hegelism. So he says Hegel's words are foolish. It's words for fools. And he says that philosophy is built up of propositions which are verbally faultless, but which correspond to no reality. Marxism proved that over and over and over again. Okay? Now, far be it from Hegel's logic that it should stoop to look at facts. It makes a statement which is verbally perfect, and if the facts do not confirm it, so much worse for the facts. So apparently this is in English a source of where that quote of Hegel's comes from. Apparently there's German and French sources as well, but this one is pretty explicit. So much worse for the facts. So, and apparently it comes from critics of Hegel. That quote comes from critics of Hegel. So Goethe, in one of his conversations with Eckermann, tells a story about the Tsar wants to put some castle or something, wants to build something on low ground at the mouth of the Neva River. And he's told that, look, the river floods. It's going to flood your building. It's going to overwhelm it with water. And so the guy says, okay, there would be frequent overflowing of the river. And he points to an ancient tree upon which were marked the various heights to which the water had in past times ascended. But apparently Peter refused to believe the testimony, so he cut down the tree so that its unwelcome evidence might be suppressed. And the work of building went on. Thaddeus, your thoughts?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like our Muslim friends, our atheist friends in the comment. We asked them to respond to the evidence presented in the video, and they I'm just going to ignore what the video has to say. I'll just say whatever I want. It's irrelevant what you're saying, because I already know what I believe, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, well. So he goes on to say this is what Hegelism would be if carried out practically and transferred from the world of suprasensibles to the world of phenomena. Right. So he says here, Hegel is virtually a pre-Copernican. For him, modern science and its methods are practically non-existent. His philosophy was born too late. It belongs to the 12th century rather than to the 19th. He's a schoolman reared out of season. Here I believe we have the key to Hegel's position. Now, again, if you examine the philosophical foundations of atheism, you will eventually end up in pagan Greece with pagan Greek philosophy. Any thoughts, Thaddeus, before I move on?
Nope.
Yeah. Okay, so let's continue. So last week we discussed, of course, the article in nature.com. This is the world's most premier scientific journal. And of course, we discussed global evidence of extreme intuitive moral prejudice against atheists. Atheists are distrusted. Atheists are seen to be morally questionable. This is a standard view worldwide, and people do not trust atheists. Just being an atheist makes people think there's something wrong with you. You don't conform to moral standards we all believe in, and therefore you're going against social norms. And of course, are atheists trusted less than rapists? According to the survey that was put forward here, the answer is yes, by 2%. So, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, basically, are atheists trusted? So, again, we covered that last week in that survey. So, atheists are not trusted very much. And, of course, we looked at anti-religion and, of course, atheism at this McGill University website. So, we discussed these articles on atheism and, of course, Holbach. Then we mentioned Duckface Man here, Thomas Huxley. Right? And, of course, this is the guy. He will be linked to universities because he created basically a consortium that the whole plan was to make sure that religion got eradicated from university and purely scientific materialism became the standard ethos or standard philosophy within, well, religion, if you will, at university. Right. So I skipped over this last week. I've now prepped these slides, and this is not Thomas Huxley. Now we're looking at Aldous Huxley, and this is the author of Brave New World, and he tells us about the vital lies that must be told by the elite because the masses just aren't smart enough to cope with the truth. Any thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, well, we've seen this kind of attitude over and over again, whether they're socialists or humanists or whatnot, whatever they call themselves. All of these academics seem to think that they're the only ones who are entitled to know the truth because if the common man finds out there's no God, then well, they're just going to act like there's no God and start killing people and doing other horrible things. But the elites, they're allowed to know this and often do things we would consider horrible, sexually immoral things. But it's okay for them, not for everyone else.
As he's going to tell us in a moment. So, this is Huxley. Now, this is the guy who wrote the book Brave New World. And he says here, I took it for granted that there was no meaning. This was due to the fact some of this is the OCR didn't function perfectly on this, and I didn't get around to cleaning up all of it. This was partly due to the fact that I shared the common belief that the scientific picture was a true picture of reality. In other words, the scientific view is the only way to measure reality. I'll give an example of the inadequacy of scientific perception in terms of understanding reality. Take for instance the idea of why is the kettle boiling? You can say, well, someone flipped a switch and electricity was flowing, electrons were flowing down a wire which is made of twisted pair copper, which was then, delivered from a substation which was using AC electricity at a certain blah, blah, blah. And of course, this flowed into a transformer in the kettle, which then basically heated, something using resistance, which then blah, blah, blah. And this caused conduction of heat into blah, and then the kettle was and that's why the kettle was boiling. Or you could try a much more honest and a much more practical and useful reason for why the kettle was boiling, because Thaddeus wanted a cup of tea. You see, both of those are perfectly true. Thaddeus wanted a cup of tea, that's why the kettle was boiling. That may be unscientific, but it's 100% true, and it's actually far more useful than the scientific explanation. Your thoughts, Thaddeus, on that?
Yeah, definitely. Science can tell us some things. It can tell us about how materials interact with one another, the physical properties of the universe, but it cannot account for what we refer to as free will. Human actions, human decisions cannot be accounted for by science. You can't measure someone's brain chemicals and electronics of their brain and determine what they're going to think about. It just doesn't work. The parts do not give you the whole in this regard.
Yeah.
And thus, when we're not looking at reason, when we're not looking at why things happen, and we're just looking at the material elements, we're missing the most important element of the world.
Right, yeah. Oh, man. Are we going to miss that guy whatever this guy from Speaker's Corner? Very sad. I'm heartbroken. Okay, so, yeah, and that was John Lennox. Yes, thank you. That's a quote taken from John Lennox. So, he says here, I had motives for not wanting the world to have a meaning, because, don't forget, this is the standard materialist atheist position. The world is a random assortment of events that occurs because atoms are colliding into each other and chemicals are just sloshing together and causing random events, right? So, as Dawkins has been wont to say, it's a meaningless world, right? I had motives for not wanting the world to have a meaning and consequently assumed that it had none and was able, without any difficulty, to find satisfying reasons for this assumption. And he says the philosopher who finds no meaning in the world is not concerned with a problem in pure metaphysics. He is also concerned to prove that there is no valid reason why he personally should not do as he wants to do. So there's no moral order so that I can do what the heck I want without restriction. Or why his friend should not seize political power and govern in the way that they find most advantageous to themselves. Well. You see, the world has no meaning. There's no moral order. There is no lawgiver. There is no God. So, you know what? We should just do for ourselves. And the voluntary, as opposed to the intellectual reasons for holding the doctrines of materialism, for examples, may be predominantly erotic. As they were in the case of Lemaitre, see his lyrical account of the pleasures of the bed in blah 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 and blah blah blah, or predominantly political, as they were in the case of Marx, or both, as in the case of Mohammed. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, we have some rare honesty here. Often atheists tell us that there's no reason why anyone would want to be an atheist, and you can't trust theists because they only want to believe in theism because they need a cosmic daddy or whatever other nonsense they want to put forward. But in fact, atheism has some obvious benefits. It allows you to be free of any morals. It allows you to do whatever the heck you want to do all the time. And it also, for the modern atheists, gives them this sense of intellectual superiority. We see here Huxley being consistent. He says that if atheism is true, then there are no morals and you can just do whatever you want. That's not what the typical atheist will hold to, because the typical atheist is a walking contradiction. They say, I'm just as moral as anyone else, but only because they're lying to themselves and saying that morality exists when it doesn't in their worldview.
Yeah, and you can see why atheists are not trusted. They're manipulative. They're seen as conmen in that sense. And yeah, and of course, Andrew Martin says, which includes manipulating others because they have no meaning or purpose. Exactly. It's also Darwinian, survival of the fittest, right? And yeah, and then of course, it comes back to carnal lust. So yes, and so there are certainly overtones of all of these in here. So let's have a look at what he says here. He says, for myself, as no doubt for most of my contemporaries, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation. It's a wonderful word, liberation. It means to be free from the shackles of society. This doesn't mean to be liberated from oppression. It means liberated from morality, from what keeps society ordered. That's another reason why atheists are not trusted. People intuitively realize that these people are going against the grain. They are destructive. The liberation we desired was simultaneously liberation from a political and economic system and liberation from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom. So you got to ask yourself, who was behind the sexual freedom of women back in the 60s? Right? Why did they do so? Understand. We objected to the political and economic system because it was unjust. Now that's an opinion, that's a claim, and of course that's what socialists have been saying for a long time, and because they want to replace it with their Marxist vision. And of course, the supporters of these systems claim that in some way they embodied the meaning, a Christian meaning, of the world. There was one admirably simple method of confuting these people, these Christians, and at the same time justifying ourselves in our political and erotic revolt. We could deny that the world had any meaning whatsoever. So these are basically kids sticking their fingers in the air and going, yeah, 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 yeah. That's pretty much what it is. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, you put it well there. Just saying, meh, all we have to do is deny that the world has any meaning. That you can't tell us what the meaning is. Ha ha ha.
Exactly. I mean, how can you reason with someone who refuses to reason like this, who's just going to do what he wants anyway, who disregards all of tradition? Traditions are solutions to problems that society has faced over the last 2,000 years. When you remove those solutions, you get the problems back. And atheists don't seem to get this. Now, let's look at this philosophy of sexual freedom. Similar tactics had been adopted during the 18th century, and for the same reasons. Now, that was the birth of the Age of Enlightenment, right? The age of mass carnal lust, but during the French Revolution, for instance. From the popular novelists of the period, such as Crébillon and Andrea blah blah blah, we learn that the chief reason for being philosophical was that one might be free from prejudices, above all, prejudices of a sexual nature. So basically, I mean, to put it bluntly, we wanted to bang everybody we could without restrictions, so yeah, we made up our own philosophy. So, more serious writers associated political with sexual prejudice and recommended philosophy as a preparation for social reform or revolution, because atheism has and always has been associated with revolt, social revolution, violent revolution, because Hegel preached violent revolution, Marx preached violent revolution. The French Revolution was a violent revolution. Your thoughts, Thaddeus, before I go on? Yeah.
Well, you've pointed out, as you've looked at many of the individual figures, that they had sexually depraved ideas, often wanting to have sex with minors or
Yep.
close relatives or this or that. And then we see it explicitly here, that the main reason to be an atheist, to reject religious thought, is because you can do whatever you want sexually.
Yeah, it's pretty much that's pretty base and raw. I mean, that's not exactly enlightened. It's. I mean, look, excuse my French here, but there's a common saying that went out of fashion some time ago, but they used to say, you got to stop thinking with your D. So basically, this is some guy developing an entire enlightened philosophy so he can think with his D. It's simple as that. It's like trying to put fancy words around some guy just being lecherous. I mean, great. The early 19th century witnessed a reaction towards meaningful philosophy of a kind that could unhappily be used to justify political reaction. So, the men of the New Enlightenment, which occurred in the middle years of the 19th century, once again used meaningless as a weapon against the reactionaries. So, this has been a battle that's been going on for a while, since the founding of modern atheism prior to the French Revolution. And the Victorian passion for respectability was so great that during the period when they were formulated, neither positivism, that's from Comte, nor Darwinism was used as a justification for sexual indulgence. So after the war, the First World War, the philosophy of meaningless came once more triumphantly into fashion. And the desire to justify a certain sexual looseness played a part in the popularization of meaningless, at least as important as that played by the desire for liberation from an unjust and inefficient form of social organizing. They just wanted to shag everything that moved. It's quite simply that. Thaddeus, before I go on, yeah.
Yeah, I think you put it well, and it's all about the bedroom.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, free love and nickel beer. So he never returned as a horse, who I believe was a young man at the time. Yeah, free love and nickel beer. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. But this is this old Enlightenment philosophy. Just sexual looseness, sexual immorality is a destruction of social norms. Now, Aldous Huxley is writing in a book called Ends and Means, and he says that the general acceptance of a doctrine that denies meaning and value to the world as a whole, while assigning them in a supreme degree to certain arbitrarily selected parts of the totality, can have only evil and disastrous results. The problem is this man is one of the architects of this philosophy. He's admitting it here, but this is one of the people responsible for this. I don't know if this is a confession. I don't know if he changed his tune, but whatever. Even Jordan Peterson speaks very much about today. For instance, compassion is held up as this super virtue, but it's compassion in terms of in context of what? And he says, and this is what is being discussed here. Indeed, it was fashionable during the Enlightenment of the middle 19th century to speak of the need for supplying the masses, that's you, in case you were wondering, with vital lies, calculated. Someone sat down and thought about how to lie to you, calculated to make those who accepted them not only happy but well behaved. Now, do understand when you look at the atheist philosophies, the atheist philosophies of utilitarianism and others. For instance, for Baron Holbach, right, the arch philosopher of atheism of the 1700s. The prime goal of his philosophy was to make people happy, whatever makes them happy. And basically, chasing everything with a skirt on, or maybe without, who knows, made people happy, therefore it was good. Whatever made you happy was good. So that's maybe not exactly a great reason to base a philosophy and truth on. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, to put it lightly, not a great basis of deciding what is true or not. And he says it straight up that, you have to lie to the people. You have to give them a sense of meaning that doesn't actually exist, because without that, who knows what they're going to do. Us elites, we can handle the truth, but those common people, we need to lie to them.
And that's exactly what he's going to tell us in a moment. Yeah. So that, be happy, shop and be happy, whatever. Okay. But be well behaved, right? And he says the truth, which was that there was no meaning or value in the world, should be revealed only to the few who were strong enough to stomach it. And of course, which means that they were the ones who realized it was survival of the fittest, get what you can, take what you can, screw everyone else. That's exactly what's being discussed here, alluded to here. So we know the truth, there is no meaning, and therefore we need to take what we can. So, yeah. So there you go. This whole idea fermented. This was fermented through the universities, and eventually became part and parcel of our culture. And thanks to atheism. Thank you to atheism for this kind of immoral, depraved, sexually rampant behavior. So this is the book, Ends and Means, an inquiry into the nature of ideals and into the methods employed for their realization. In other words, atheism is a proselytizing political religion with political and social aims, which seeks to realize those aims in society. By Aldous Huxley. Notice he says here, good is that which makes for unity. Evil is that which makes for separateness. You see? So we're all the same. Can't we all just be one? I know we have completely contradictory beliefs and faiths and philosophies, but can't we just hug a tree, get along? Can't we just all get along, coexist? Notice it says here in the Sharia, he who settles disagreements between people to bring about good or says something commendable, he's not a liar. Right? So if you lie to bring people together, you're doing good. You're not lying. This is identical to the Sharia, so which makes me wonder why there is such similarity between much of what is happening in Islam and the philosophical foundation for atheism, because there's certainly overlap. Thaddeus, over to you.
Well, you say you wonder why there's so much overlap. Well, one suggestion might be that they have the same ultimate author, that they have demonic, satanic forces as their author deep down.
Yeah, no, certainly. But also, if you trace it back to a philosophical root, you're going to get back to pagan Greece. You're going to get back to nihilists. You're going to get back to literally pagan philosophers. You're going to get back to the sophists, who the serious philosophers called liars. And Islam utilizes a tactic, a method of lying called hiyal. And in Western philosophy, it is called heuristic. They're identical. And this is based on sophistry, which is professional lying. So they're both made here. So good is that which makes for unity. Well, the thing is, I don't have unity with people who want to diddle babies. I don't have unity with them. Right? And in fact, it says in the Bible, do not be unequally yoked. Right? Do not be unequally yoked with those who have ideas utterly contrary to yours. So this, of course, goes against Christian doctrine, goes against Christian belief that we cannot support. Whereas here we just need to get along, be tolerant, be tolerant. This is, well, be tolerant with what? With I don't know, pedophiles. So yeah, your thoughts, Thaddeus, before I move on.
Yeah, it's all about peace and tolerance, except for the Christians. Of course, no one is allowed to be tolerant of their ideas.
Yeah.
You can only be tolerant of you be tolerant of all depraved ideas, but don't be tolerant of Christians, because they stand for morality that's opposed to your own.
Yeah, no, they're not inclusive. We're not inclusive of men in women's underwear reading to 3-year-old babies who want them to sit in their lap while they read to them. That was called, there's a name for that. Why do men in women's underwear want to fondle 2-year-olds and have them sit in their lap while they read library books to them. Are you sure it's about reading the library books? So yeah. So this is we've covered this before. Yes, it's called grooming. Thank you, Andrew Martin. It's definitely grooming. Okay. So we are now on slide number 74 of 81. So atheist word games, the etymology of atheist. I covered this last week. We're just going back over these slides because I've improved upon some of them. So in ancient Greece, the word for God was theos. Now, if theos meant God, then there would be a need for a word that meant the opposite. So understand, atheism is a response to its reaction to theism. Without theism, you would not have atheism. Therefore, atheism is the contradictory of, the reaction to, the opposite of theism. By putting a in front of theos, the word atheos was formed, which means no God or not God, depending on the translations you look at. But basically, it's the truth claim that there is no God. Right? In Greek, a can also mean without, although in this case, so remember, it can also mean without. It doesn't mean it only means without. Or in this case, no makes more sense. Taken this way, a person that says no God is making a denial of the existence of God. So it is a truth claim. So again, of course, atheists are utterly in denial about the meaning of the word atheism. They will not admit the truth of it. I believe they know, but they are utterly in denial about the fact that they are denying the existence of God. They are making a truth claim, but yet, of course, they do not want to prove their claim. They do not want to bring evidence for that. That is, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, it's astonishing that this group of people who tell us that they just go where the evidence leads, that they have no prejudice, are 100% against giving any evidence for their position. Thus, they redefine terms so that they don't have to. Really bizarre.
Yeah. Marion says something very interesting. Marion Grand Bruheim says, if these chickens were bona fide rebels, they would have done as they pleased without first trying to convince themselves, and of course the rest of us, that there is no God. So at some core level, they realize they need to kill God. They need to destroy God. They need to get rid of God so they can act without the restraint of God, right? Without the moral law of God. So yeah, that's an interesting point. Now, any confusion about whether it meant without belief in God, as modern atheists claim, would not have been a consideration at this point in time. So when this was all coined, atheism was a denial of God's existence. Now, of course, atheists want to moan about that the dictionaries and the encyclopaedias are a conspiracy against them. Literally, they do. Literally, that happens. These two words, theos and atheos, are the root words from where we get theism and atheism. Now, notice in ism, atheism. Ism means a set of beliefs, a set of principles, a doctrine. An ism, like communism, is a doctrine, a set of beliefs, a political set of beliefs, right? So atheism is a doctrine, it's a set of beliefs, it's an ism. So ism means Greek, ismos, original suffix of action or of state, forming nouns from verbs. Its usage today is a doctrine, a theory, a system. It's not just a psychological state. Oh, I've got a blank mind. Look at me. I'm sophisticated. I have a blank mind. I haven't thought about the yeah. Thaddeus.
As usual, you put it in a very humorous way, but you're also right on that the average person who wants to call themselves an atheist also want to claim that they don't have a position, that they simply lack belief, or put it as you did, that they have no thoughts, therefore they're sophisticated. What?
I haven't thought about it. I don't have any beliefs about this. Fine, whatever. So if you don't have any beliefs, you don't have any opinions. So shut up in the comments. I don't want to see any comments. You don't have any thoughts about this. You don't know anything about this. You've never thought about it. You're not making any truth claims. So don't make any claims. Wouldn't that be sensible? That is, wouldn't that be logical to draw that conclusion? They shouldn't say anything because they don't have anything to say, because they haven't thought about it, because they don't have any truth claims. They don't have a position.
Yeah, if they're being consistent. They want to claim that their position is the default, where Iraq has the same position as them, then they apparently have nothing to tell us.
Yeah. So at the time, historically at this time, theos came in. So at the time that the word theos came into existence, there was no formal doctrine of God. So theism developed sometime later, most likely during the French Enlightenment. So this idea of the doctrine of God was developing during, as part and parcel of this. You had the scientific revolution, and of course you had the growth of universities, and of course theology became a thing that people could study at university, and and then theology started developing. Right, everything started to become formalized, and of course then during the French Enlightenment, these guys became anti-Christians, very, very virulently anti-Christian. So this is when the modern form of atheism came into existence. This tracing of the development of the word is also part of etymology. So once more formal doctrines came into being, then the word theism was created. Theos, God, ism, belief, or doctrine. Thus the modern use of the word theism is belief in God. Therefore, atheism is of course the opposite, disbelief in God. Right? So the literal Greek root for theism is theos, atheos, which means no belief in God or without belief in God. But just like the word theos is the root, literal meaning of theism, so atheos, no God, is the root word for atheism. That's why when you look in a dictionary or encyclopedia, under the word atheism, they list the Greek literal meaning as a denial of God. That is a verb. That is not a psychological state. Now, we've been through the series, we've discussed dozens. We've got over 50 definitions here. I've got nearly 60 definitions that I've brought from top sources. And 99% of them, and in fact, the idea of a psychological state is kept as a special case, and it appears in like only one or two definitions. Everything else states it is an active denial. It's a doctrine that actively denials and argues against God. Thaddeus, you're nodding your head there?
Well, I was just kind of thinking that you could look at this like, say, taxes. Oh, I don't have any beliefs about paying my taxes. Therefore, I just don't. I don't think the government's going to see it that way. They're not going to be like, you didn't have a position, therefore you don't need to justify your lack of paying. They're going to say, you didn't pay your taxes, you denied us our funds, you're going to be fined or put in jail. I don't think they're going to accept that I just had the psychological state of not paying taxes.
Yeah, yeah. And Frank Villado says the foundation of the university system was brought forth by the Catholic Church. Christianity is at the foundation of the world's university structures, and that is true. Yet every academic is anti-Judeo-Christian. In fact, if you look at various institutions in America, like some of the major universities, the name of the particular one escapes me now, but on the same level as Yale and Harvard and those places, many of them are founded by actual theologians or founded by very, very religious, Christian religious people. And now, of course, they've been turned against those purposes. In fact, back in the day, if you go back to England, if you go back in the day, to receive a doctorate, it was compulsory that you also became a theologian. In fact, in many cases, to receive a doctorate, you actually had to become a priest to actually receive a doctorate and to continue to advance studies. This was standard, but now, of course, a lot of this has been expunged from history because, we can't have any of that Christianity stuff around. Right, so we're on slide number 76 of 81. So let's have a look at a couple of etymological definitions again. So we have the Oxford Dictionary of English Etymology. Why do I call it the Oxford Dictionary? Because every single atheist who comments is like, well, I don't believe in the dictionary. Look, we don't care what you believe, right? We need some orthodoxy here. Because the last I checked, the world doesn't give you a phone call and say, hey, random atheist YouTube comment troll, we have a critical question here, and you're at Yale and Princeton and Harvard and Oxford, and can you please, we need you right now. We need you to come on and advise us, because we really need your personal, I don't care about your personal definition, go away. So the following are the definitions offered by two dictionaries of etymology. The word is followed by the accepted literal meaning from the Greek root word. Atheism is atheos, denying God. To deny, we covered that definition much earlier in the series. It's to deny. It's actively to say, I don't believe that because I have come to a conclusion after considering the evidence, and I think that's crap. And of course, atheists want to say, well, yes, it can mean that, but it also means you just lack a belief. Okay, look, man, these are contradictory. Yeah, the wheels are square, but the wheels are also round. It's like, no, pick one, please. Thaddeus.
Well, we have Oxford, the most prestigious dictionary, the most prestigious university. Then we have random guy in the comments who says, why don't you just ask an atheist what their definition is? I mean, which one should we go with? Should we go with the most widely regarded best dictionary in the world, or should we go with what some random atheist thinks that they believe?
That's a tough one, Thaddeus. I don't know, man. These atheists in the comments make a very strong case. I mean, they just say, look, you should just believe atheists. Have you consulted an atheist? I don't know, man. I don't know. Oxford. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to be exclusionary. I want to be inclusive of these opinions. What would you do, Thaddeus? What would Thaddeus do?
Yeah, I think that I would tell them that we have to have a common definition in order to have a meaningful conversation. Because if you're using one term and I'm using another, then we're talking about different things, or, we're using the same term in two different ways. We're talking about two different things.
Yeah,
Muslims play the same game where they redefine words so that they can say something and you think you know what they're talking about, but they're talking about something different because they've redefined the meaning of the terms.
yeah, and that's a standard sophist game, and this is what they do. In fact, it's also standard Gnostic practice. It's also standard Gnostic practice. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. And of course, I mean, hashtag believe all atheists. Okay, so we have a million definitions. What the hell does the word mean? This is standard practice within atheism. If you're looking to destroy society, you need to destroy its symbols. This symbol, this word, has a particular meaning attached to it. Now, if you give it a million different genders, because it's like, why didn't you ask me for my gender? Just believe my gender. Well, there's no difference in the thinking. It's exactly what we are dealing with. So, yeah, that's exactly it. So, they are moving the goalposts. They are changing the ideas. So, yeah. Let's say it's a note to the internet atheist and agrees with these definitions, with Stanford's definition of atheism being a position. Well, Austin O'Keefe says, we atheists believe evidence should be a good foundation requirement for belief, not feelings or superstitions, and belief without sufficient evidence is not justifiable. A is Greek for without. No, it also means without. Its original root is not. We just went through 6 different, I've done 6 series like this. I spent like 6 hours doing this, 7 hours doing this. Gone through nearly 60 various definitions from major academic sources. I am not going to be listening to John Q Random Atheist in the comments. So, and yes, excellent point there, Thaddeus. Excellent point. Yeah, so let's have a look at the etymological dictionary of the English language. Now, of course, Austin O'Keefe is saying, well, A is Greek for without. That's great, because he's the source. Austin O'Keefe is the guy that we need to listen to. When Oxford needs information, Oxford phones Austin O'Keefe, no doubt. Oxford doesn't go to academics. No. Oxford gives Austin O'Keefe a call. So atheism, all are coined words from the Greek atheos, denying the gods. Oh my God, we have another dictionary that doesn't agree with Austin. What is with this? A word introduced into the Latin by Cicero in the form atheos, a negative prefix, and theos, a god, not a god. Etymological Dictionary of English Language, 1958. So denying the gods. Someone who has denied. Now, if you deny that they exist, no, I don't think that means you've thought about it. You've come to a conclusion. That is, before I go on.
Yeah, well, what Austin said in principle is correct, that you need evidence for your position. Problem is the atheists try to tell us they don't have a position, and therefore they don't need atheists, or don't need evidence. Over and over again, I don't have a position. I just don't believe in God. Therefore, I don't have to supply any evidence. You have to supply all evidence. And anything you supply, if I deny it, then it doesn't count as evidence.
Yeah, now, interesting. He says that, you notice he just answered, I think you get it wrong. We can't prove something that is not there. Well, Austin, as an atheist, you are by default a materialist. And as a materialist, you by default don't believe that anything non-material exists. Consciousness, therefore, is an illusion. It cannot and does not exist. Obviously, therefore, anything that is immaterial, anything that is of spirit, does not exist. Your whole position, by default, excludes literally everything and anything that is immaterial. So you cannot receive evidence, you cannot even comprehend evidence, because your default position rejects any such evidence by default. So you are asking people to provide evidence that your worldview is unable to comprehend, unable to process, and that has already rejected any such evidence in advance. So, yeah, so So you can't prove something is there, strictly speaking. Let's not play. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, can you prove that something is not there? But yeah, moving on. So let's continue. So disbelief defined. Now, current dictionaries, encyclopedias, and philosophical sources follow the literal meaning when giving the standard usage of the word. Since many of the following definitions use the word disbelief, we need to have a correct definition of that word as well, right? So disbelief is, according to the Cambridge International Dictionary of English, the refusal to believe that something is true, which is simply the kid sticking his fingers in his ears going, nah, 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 nah. I refuse to believe. That is not necessarily a rational or logical position. It is simply someone being intransigent and stubborn, right? In fact, Adele Cole says atheism by default shouldn't believe in ideas. Yeah, ideas exist in minds. Minds don't exist. Only the brain exists. And that's just random chemicals. And of course, it is just simply matter colliding. Now, of course, if matter is just colliding at random, would we have to trust the thoughts that come out of those random collisions? Like, hell no. So disbelief, refusal or reluctance to believe. So a refusal or reluctance to believe, American Heritage Dictionary of English Language. So this is an active state of disbelief. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Well, we see what the dictionaries say, but we got to wait to see what Austin says, because we know that we should just ask whatever random atheist who happens to be in the comments today what the correct definition is, because we cannot trust dictionaries. Those are religious texts written for religious people. We have to ask the atheists.
We cannot trust encyclopedias. We cannot even trust the top atheist academics on the planet. I mean, I have like nearly 5 dozen sources here, and not one of them is correct, but every single random atheist is. So, okay, let's have a look now at the Baker Encyclopedia of Christian Apologetics by Norman L. Geisler. He says here, while polytheism dominated much of ancient Greek thought, and theism dominated the medieval Christian view, atheism has had its day in the modern world. Of course, not all who lack faith in a divine being wish to be called atheist. Some prefer the positive description of humanist. See, humanism, secular. On Thursday, I'll be having my first show on secular humanism. I nearly named it schmuckular humanism because, man, it's definitely for schmucks. Right? You do need to understand humanism was started, atheists claim to be humanists. The bulk of them, obviously, they're all materialists, and most claim to be humanists because, they can't be religious. Humanism was started explicitly and specifically as a religion. And basically, it's a rip-off, a plagiarism of Christianity, but scientific. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to learn about all the dirty little secrets in that little religion. Others are perhaps best described as materialists. Now notice, Marx was a humanist, Dawkins was a humanist, Harris was a humanist, Lenin was a humanist, right? Stalin was a humanist, Gramsci was a humanist. A lot of the worst people to ever live were humanists. So yeah, and all of them are materialists. Thaddeus, you're smiling again?
Well, humanism is a very interesting position. To be a humanist, you have to say that there is no meaning to the world. Therefore, I'm going to assign meaning to the world, and we're all going to agree to my meaning to the world, I guess, which is probably why it's so popular among all these people who want to control others in society.
Yeah, but it's interesting when you say that life has no meaning. Then, of course, as Andrew earlier said, then you impose your meaning on the world, one that benefits you. Now, all of these are non-theists. Now, notice there are perfectly good words like agnostic and non-theist that already exist. But atheists, for some reason, want to claim that the word atheism means anything but anti-theistic, right? But anyway, but all are non-theists and most are anti-theistic. Some prefer the more neutral term atheists. Okay, fine and well. In distinction from a theist, see theism, who believes in God, exists beyond, who believes that God exists beyond and in the world, and a pantheist who believes God is the world. Now here's the odd thing, matter is created. Now notice, Baron Holbach, for instance, the arch-atheist, the early arch-atheist, to the first of the modern atheists, he believed that matter was eternal. This was an article of faith in his atheistic belief. This is also what scientists tried to insist was the case, because a lot of the scientific ideas, the scientism we were looking at over the last couple of centuries, is based on atheistic doctrine, because they want to prove their atheistic doctrine true. They don't want a religious view that the world was created. And of course, now we've got the Big Bang. You've got this idea that the Earth was created, and if you take the world back, if you go back in time, you will come to a finite point where there was no matter. Matter was created out of spirit, right? God created the world. This is something that atheists don't want to be true, because, but you don't, people don't realize, and atheists don't realize the beginning of their own particular scientific philosophies, right? Which is they're trying to push an atheistic position that matter has always existed. But this, again, also, according to the physics, cannot be the case. You cannot have an eternally existing universe. That is, we discussed that in the past. So anyway, even their ideas come out of these Enlightenment ideas and come out of the paganism. If you look at Epicurus, some of these ideas are a universe governed by chance. Like, this is high science. You got to be a PhD, physicist to know this stuff. Yeah, Epicurus said exactly the same thing. Epicurus was a pagan, right? Pagan Greek. And, he didn't have his PhD, but he was saying the same crap that lots of atheist physicists were very smart at saying. Thaddeus, you're smiling again?
Well, this was the default position of the enlightened world, so-called enlightened world, for most of human history, is that, well, we know that those religious fairy tales say the universe had a beginning, but we know it has to be eternal. And logically speaking, that's the only way it makes sense. If there's a beginning, then there has to be a cause of that beginning, which then gets you basically straight to God. And so they assumed that the universe had to be eternal. That's the only way that they could understand how the universe could lack a being that we call God. So science then proved them wrong, and then suddenly, oh, it's only those idiotic religious people who think that things are eternal. We know that the universe had a beginning, even though that was the atheist position forever and ever.
Yeah. And also the pantheist idea that God is the material, right? Well, the material was created because if we had an eternally existing material universe, it would have achieved heat death by now. Everything would be dead. So this is not a viable solution within physics either. Anyway, moving on. That's a discussion outside of the scope of this. So an atheist believes there is no God either beyond or in the world. There is only a universe, a cosmos, and nothing more. So, yeah. So this could mean, so Austin, you need to update yourself on modern physics. That's all been disproven by now. Now, so atheism, let's have a look. Since atheists share much in common with agnostics and skeptics, they are often confused with them. See Russell, what is an agnostic? Technically, a skeptic says, I doubt that God exists. And an agnostic declares, I don't know or can't know whether God exists. But an atheist claims to know, or at least believe, that God does not exist. As we know, they do make the claim. Now, if they want to claim, of course, atheists claim to be agnostic, in which case they are very militant agnostics who say, we don't know and you don't either. Right? So, however, since atheists are all non-theists, and since most atheists share with skeptics an atheistic stand, an anti-theistic stand, many of the arguments are the same. It is in this sense that modern atheism rests heavily upon the skepticism of David Hume and the agnosticism of Immanuel Kant. Once you go into Hume and Kant, you realize these people are idiots, like a lot of the Enlightenment thinkers. Once you get past the nice things, the little PR that people, quotes that people have about them, and start looking into what they actually believed or what kind of pedophiles they were, for instance, maybe you're not going to be very happy with who these people are. But moving on. Now, we get to this guy, Julian Baggini, wrote a book called Atheism, a very short introduction. This man, and published by Oxford, he's a very well-known academic, a respected academic. Atheism, we must be aware, again, I've said this before, a priori rejects the immaterial. How can they be honest when asking for evidence of the divine or the immaterial when they reject this evidence out of hand due to a default materialist mechanical position? I mean, is that a fair question to ask, that is?
Yeah, that's a perfectly reasonable observation there, that when you define something as impossible, and then you assert that you have come to logical conclusions based solely on the evidence, it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny. Either you've just defined it that way, you have an unproven, unprovable belief about the nature of reality, and you leave it at that, or you allow for the possibility and then you need to provide evidence.
Yeah. So I've consulted, Muslims always say, have you consulted a scholar? Well, I consulted a whole bunch on this particular presentation. And Julian Baggini tells us atheism is in fact extremely simple to define. It is the belief that there is no God. So Austin, can you please get hold of this Julian Baggini, PhD, and let him know that he's completely wrong. He's not a real atheist. Just drop a note, but just contact him and let him know. And he says here, the atheist's rejection of belief in God is usually accompanied by a broader rejection of any supernatural or transcendental reality. Clearly, this guy doesn't understand what atheism is because he hasn't spoken to Austin. Austin, get in touch with him right now. For example, an atheist does not usually believe in the existence of immortal souls, life after death, ghosts, or supernatural powers. The arguments and ideas that sustain atheism tend naturally to rule out other beliefs in the supernatural or transcendental. So basically, these atheists looked in their telescopes, saw the stars, and said, Lloyd, we're not seeing dolphins. I haven't seen a single dolphin. I've been looking through this telescope for 6 months. I haven't seen a single dolphin. Dolphins do not exist. Stop lying to me, Lloyd. There's no dolphins. And that's Julian Baggini, British philosophy and atheism, a very short introduction. That is.
Yeah, I mean, again, if the atheist wants to claim that they have a reasoned position, then they need to supply evidence equal to or greater than the theist provides for their religion. They can't just sit back and say, well, I don't find your evidence sufficient, therefore I'm right. That is not how honest conversation works. And we see that academic atheists, they acknowledge this. They understand that their position requires some defense. The atheist on YouTube in the comment section, 95% of the time, they don't share that position with the academic atheist. They say, I get to sit back as the judge of all the information provided, and if you don't provide evidence that is sufficient for me, then I win by default. I do not have to do anything whatsoever to support my position.
But also, they a priori reject any such evidence because their worldview is material and mechanical and refuses to accept any such evidence. It rejects it as incorrect by default. So
Yeah.
how do you solve that problem? Now we've got another atheist who, obviously academic, who has no idea what he's talking about, who didn't speak with Austin. The book is called What is Atheism? A Short Introduction by Douglas E. Kruger. This is this guy over here. Atheism is the belief that there are no gods. Clearly this man is, I don't know how he got a PhD or whatever he got. Douglas Kruger, What is Atheism, 1998. So yeah, these guys, these are academics, teach at university, clearly have no idea what they're on about. They even wrote books, good grief. Why didn't they just give... What's that? Sorry?
I was just saying, that's amazing that they wrote an entire book on something that all you have to do is say, this is the default position.
I lack belief.
End of story.
I lack a belief, I lack a belief. It's just I literally lack belief. Here's my 300-page book to explain that. Notice though, Julian Baggini has a Twitter called Microphilosophy, and he's quoted this because he quotes things from famous philosophers, and he's got this little quote recently: "There are no facts, only interpretations." It's like, this is my wife. There are no facts, Lloyd. There's only an interpretation. And it's not a fact, just an interpretation, because your wife's looking mighty fine, and I think I'm going to, be making a proposition here. It's like, yeah, there's no facts. That is, what do you think? This is the kind of philosophy this guy espouses.
As Righteous put in the chat there, is that a fact? Is it a fact that there's no facts?
Yeah, there are no absolutes. Is that an absolute statement? I mean, this is the this doesn't even belong on a bumper sticker.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing that it sounds reasonable until you spend 30 seconds thinking about it, and you're like, wait a minute.
But don't these same...
But you're making a factual claim that there are no facts. That's self-contradictory.
Yeah, we were magnets to people who don't know what they're talking about. Here's the thing. Don't they claim to be scientific? Doesn't science deal in facts?
Supposedly.
So, yeah, I don't know. This is... Atheists are irrational. These people are babblers. Okay, so now I want to look at, we're nearly done, guys. We at slide number 81 of 81, unless I missed the numbering scheme again, and I'm on slide number 81 of 212. So you never know. So this is from the Journal of the Royal Institute of Philosophy. Okay, it's a journal called Philosophy, and from the Journal of the Royal Institute. This is October 2022, which was a month ago, more or less. Okay, 2 months. When I wrote this was a month ago. So this is fairly recent. It's within the last 60 days. And it's got a whole bunch of people, and it's also published by Cambridge University. So clearly, it's it, it's going to try, but it's not going to be on the same level as Austin in the comments. It's going to try, that is. They're going to try here, but Austin is the guy that I don't know why they didn't just call Austin. You know. So this is very reputable. Yes, Andrew. I sincerely hope so. I try to use reputable sources. I mean, I try not to make stuff up. So there are no facts. There's only interpretations. My car is red. That's just an interpretation, Lloyd. It's I think it's a baby blue myself. You know, is that a fact? Anywho, moving on from defining atheism and the burden of proof. Now, this is from the author. Kitsune, welcome. Merry Christmas. So this is from the author who wrote this particular article within the Journal of Philosophy for Cambridge University Press. And he says, contemporary atheists have problematically conflated atheism with agnosticism, whether knowingly or unknowingly. He says the first semantic fusion is the lack of belief in God is combined with outright denial of God under the single label of atheism. Fascinating. So Cambridge University acknowledges that there are people that have outright denial versus people that lack a belief. Now, the second is morphological fission, the separation of atheism into two subcategories, where lack of belief in God is labeled as negative atheism and the outright denial of God as positive atheism. And while more explicitly demarcated, they are still positioned under the broad notion of atheism. So two contradictory positions, effectively, under this broad position. Atheism should be the propositional denial of God, and that uncertainty and unknowability about God should be reserved to characterize agnosticism. So they're trying to conflate their numbers, like Islam does. Everyone's born an atheist, everyone's born a Muslim. Conflating these positions under the single term atheism mischaracterizes agnostics and inflates the territory of atheists. Your thoughts, that is?
Well, this is astonishing. I believe that when we started this series, this article hadn't yet been published. Yet this is basically exactly what I said in the first episode, that we have a perfectly good term for someone who just lacks belief, and that's called an agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
So why are atheists trying to commandeer that term? And then this article goes on and answers that question because they're trying to inflate their own numbers. They're trying to look more important than they are, just like Islam. Whenever we talk to a Muslim, we point out a position of Muslims and they say, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not a real Muslim. Then we say, why is Islam true? Because it's the fastest growing religion. There's 1 billion Muslims in the world. They want
Yeah.
to claim everyone for numbers, and they want to claim no one for accountability.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, I know. So let's see. So, guys, I have 99,100 and 2,102 and just hit the like button, okay? Because let's get those numbers up. Thank you very much. And if you don't like it, just whack the like button twice. So atheism equals humanism equals Satanism, and that is true. I've discussed that before. I mean, the overlap. Hold on, you can be an atheist about God's not belief, but you can be an agnostic about different things, like what happened before. Oh, so okay, so the word is elastic. I see it now. That is you. Your thoughts on his latest comment? Because the dictionary is wrong, the academics are wrong, Cambridge is wrong, Oxford is wrong, Yale is wrong, Harvard is wrong. Major atheist academics, the top atheist academics are wrong, but Austin's right.
Yeah, well, I understand what he's trying to say, but he's conflating different things, as often is the case, as this article is describing here. The terms atheist and agnostic, properly speaking, are just about your position towards God. To say I'm an atheist about gods is redundant. You're just an atheist. There is no atheist about anything besides gods. That is what an atheist is, someone who denies the existence of gods. Likewise, an agnostic is someone who says either that they personally don't know or that it's absolutely unknowable that there, whether or not there is a god or gods. Atheists like to play this game all the time. Like, well, you Christians are atheists about the Greek gods. No, we're not. An atheist is someone who believes that there is no God. Do not conflate these terms. You're making the language meaningless. And I
Yeah,
think you're doing this on purpose.
of course they
I
do.
think you're doing this on purpose because you don't want to be accountable for what the terms actually mean.
He says, how can atheists be Satanists? We don't believe in supernatural beings like devils and angels or mythical beings. Because, Austin, first of all, I know you haven't been watching. This has been a long series. It's been 6 episodes. It's probably 7 hours of content, or more. Who knows? I don't know. It's about 6, 7 hours of content. But do understand that the word Satan is from the Hebrew opposer. We're not talking about a little guy with horns and a little trident sitting in hell on a warm seat. Okay? In this case, we're talking about in opposition to. Atheists have been, historically, traditionally, always have been in violent opposition to the church. You must understand, atheism is very much a detailed philosophy. It is a detailed doctrine, and in fact, works and operates as a religion, an anti-religion, an atheology. Historically, atheism was developed as an anti-Christian theology. If you look at the history of your Enlightenment prophets, your Enlightenment philosophers, these people were extremely anti-Christian. Right? They weren't anti-Buddhist, they were anti-Christian specifically. And they were very much anti the doctrine of the church and the moral law of the church. So therefore they are opposed to. When you look at the Satanism of Anton LaVey, right, the arch Satanist that everyone's heard of, his Satanism was atheistic. He followed an atheistic Satanism. So he was simply against that of the church. He was against the Bible, against the God of the Bible, right? He opposed those morals. He opposed those laws. He wanted liberation from those. And if you look at the tenets of the American Humanist Association and other humanist associations who are atheists and claim to speak for atheists, they're the largest groups of atheists as a formal group. Their entire Enlightenment philosophy is perfectly in alignment with Anton LaVey's Satanism and with the Temple of Satan. You guys, the Temple of Satan has exactly the same aims as the American Humanist Association, the Canadian Humanist Association, you name them. So yes, atheists are satanic. They oppose God. Thaddeus, I'll let you go on.
No, I think you pretty much covered it there. The atheist and our new friend, atheist in general, and our new friend is being a good example of this. They want to redefine terms. You know, he thinks that you can just be agnostic about anything. Well, you certainly can be onshore, have an onshore position about anything. You know, you can have an onshore position of the age of the earth or the universe, to use his example. But that doesn't mean that you're agnostic. Agnostic is a specific thing. It relates to your position over the question of whether or not there is a God or gods. Atheism is a position that there is no God. Agnosticism is a position that there's insufficient evidence to determine whether or not there's a God. And when you try to use these terms in other ways, you make the terms meaningless. Which is ironic because then he comes in here and he's like, how can atheists be Satanists? Trying to use only one very particular definition of a Satanist. Apparently, only he is allowed to give terms an unlimited scope.
Yeah. Marian says, we're afraid to leave and forced to reproduce. Therefore, Islam is true. That's Abdulism. Yeah. And he says, atheists being prophets, definition, an individual who is regarded as being in contact with the divine being. Now, look here, buddy. You just brought me a definition from a dictionary, but atheists don't do the dictionary. You know, Austin, don't look at the dictionary. Don't look at the encyclopedia. Those are wrong. What you need to do is just talk to a Christian. Now, I'm going to give you my definition because that's the one you need to listen to. Not this fake dictionary encyclopedia nonsense. I'm sorry, Austin. my definition is correct, not this dictionary nonsense, okay? And prophet means someone who speaks and announces positions in atheism. There you go. There you go. Hope that helps. Have a nice day. So sorry, man. So yes, atheism has its prophets. You want to call it that, all right? If you look at the founders of modern atheism, right, the people who were the prophets of atheism, if you want to call it now. I don't know if you understand the difference between literal and figurative language, but anyway, I'm assuming you don't. I would do this in crayon for you, but I can't write with crayons on the screen. But I can try and speak slowly and use small words if that will help you. Um, so, so yeah, atheists have no clue about the history of atheism. Atheism has always been irrational. Atheism has always been violent. Atheism has always been revolutionary, and atheism has always been associated with socialism. Violent, revolutionary socialism. And of course, someone mentioned Antoine de Vey was a humanist. Well, atheism is opposed to, it is not a neutral position, it is opposed to. And the history of the early atheists, the ones who formed modern atheism, they were incredibly, violently opposed to. If you look at the very first atheist state, and every single atheist state since the founding of the French Revolution and the French atheist state, they murdered Christians. They murdered anyone who got in their way. Right? So atheists have always been violent. So anyway, moving on, I'm getting off track here. So let me continue with my notes here. So what we have is atheists always attempt to conflate atheism and agnosticism. And of course, these are militant agnostics, if you want to call them that. They don't know, and you don't either, or they don't believe, so you mustn't either. Whatever. So what we've got is from Cambridge University, we happen to have this paper, which is very recent. I mean, it's a couple of months old, that states that atheists deliberately, and this is village atheists, obviously, when you read the academic atheists, they very bluntly and openly and very honestly tell you they are in opposition to the Christian doctrine. Whereas village atheists constantly want to go, well, we just have a lack of belief because we can't defend that position. Anyway, so yeah, let me continue. And this would be, okay, so anything you want to say, Thaddeus, before I move on?
No, I think we're good.
Sorry, man. So God, being, redefined as a being. Now, God technically is being. Everything has existence within God. Right? God is being. He is the first cause. This would mean that he's the thing upon which everything is contingent. This would be the philosophy from the Christian point of view. Whereas, of course, redefining God as a being, of course, then allows this little semantic trick allows for certain philosophical changes to occur. So the redescription of God as a being ushered in atheism. The bringing about of God as a being means the bringing about of one who can also be declared to be dead. So that's this paper here, Hemming, 1999, and it's from secularhumanism.nonreligion.org, and it's a paper. So this is from a group that studies this stuff and puts out papers on the subject. So now let's have a look at Epicureanism. Epicurus, one of the founders of modern atheistic belief, the pagan philosopher that atheists are imitating that they have no idea they're imitating. Just like they have a bunch of crazy, insane people in the past that they are copying and verbatim, but have no idea. The most important Greek thinker in the development of atheism was the Greek pagan-era philosopher Epicurus, circa 300 BC. Drawing on the ideas of Democritus and the atomists, he espoused a materialistic philosophy according to which the universe was governed by laws of chance, without the need for divine intervention. Now, understand, if we go into depth, and in the future I might well talk much more about Epicurus, but when you look at these ideas, atheism is effectively taking these old pagan ideas, as I've mentioned before, they're taking pagan ideas from utterly crazy, dishonest liars like Protagoras and Protagoras' friends, the nihilists and so on, and they basically are repeating these very same pagan ideas from 2,500 years ago and going, well, this is science. Science says, well, except I can go back into the history books, bring up the ideas of these pagan philosophers, and it's exactly the same information. And then it wasn't science, then it was just speculation by random BC pagans. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, these ancient philosophers, they often argued, as it says here, that the gods did exist, but that they didn't matter, that they were irrelevant because they they existed, but they didn't care about human beings. They didn't interact with human beings. The position is effectively the same as atheism. It's the same in practice. There might be some technical differences, but it's the same in practice. Thus, you're absolutely correct when you say that, these enlightened atheist ideas go back to their roots in pagan philosophers who technically held that the pantheon of gods was real, but they thought they didn't matter in any way, thus having effectively the same position as modern atheists.
Yeah. No, but if you look at the philosophical ideas, like, for instance, the universe, they spoke of atoms, and then, of course, they spoke of the random oscillation of the atoms, which would cause, because he was also a materialist. He was mechanical, right? So the very same ideas that Dawkins espouses today as scientific theory are the very same ideas that this guy espoused in 2400 BC, right? Sorry, 2400 years ago in 300 BC. These are the very same ideas. That simply atoms banging together caused consciousness, caused thinking, because there was only matter. There was nothing beyond matter. Austin says you're doing a lot of ad hominem about atheists when we just don't believe in ancient mythology as real history. No, I am providing a lot of history. When I say that the early atheists, the atheists that you get your ideas from, who actually were far more scholarly and academic, even if they were just completely bat poop insane, but they were actually a lot more knowledgeable about their philosophies, and they were copying the ancient Greeks. They were copying Greek paganism. And of course, the modern atheists are simply just verbatim repeating the same things very badly. So, yeah, ad hominem.
Yeah, if I could point out that in Austin is attempting to sound intellectual. He's saying, "You're giving ad hominem attacks." Austin, if you don't know what the term means, maybe you shouldn't use it because it means against the person. When did we attack an atheist and say we shouldn't believe in their ideas because of who they are? We never did that. What we actually did is point out how dictionaries, atheist philosophers, historical thinkers, how they define their terms. And then we said that the modern atheist in the YouTube comments doesn't pay any attention and just makes up his own stuff. So how exactly was that an ad hominem? It wasn't. You don't know what the term means. You don't know anything. You're here acting like you're intellectually superior.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, we're discussing the history of atheism. Seriously, Austin, do yourself a favor. Look at the history of atheism from modern atheism. You're looking at the 1750s onwards. You're looking at just prior to the French Revolution. The French Revolution was an atheist revolution. It was violent. It was irrational. It was sexually debauched. It was vicious. It was murderous. And to be honest, it was pretty much the same as every other atheist government has ever been in history since then. Not a lot has changed. Atheist governments have always been incredibly violent.
Well, yeah, he's correct. I did just do an ad hominem on him, but that's not what this presentation's about. I'm not saying we should dismiss your ideas because you're an idiot. I'm saying we should dismiss your ideas because they have nothing to do with the atheist philosophers and intellectual thinkers. You are an idiot, though. I will agree with that.
Yeah, I'm happy to go with that too. Now, one of the most eloquent expressions of Epicurean thought is Lucretius on the nature of things, 1st century BC, in which he held that gods exist, but argued that religious fear was one of the chief causes of human unhappiness. Now, of course, this ties directly to the views of multiple atheist philosophers, starting with the Baron de Holbach, whom we've mentioned multiple times during this presentation. We've gone into some detail on him, and of course various others from utilitarianism, that the highest good is happiness. You see, and religion holds you back from happiness. And of course, we've got lots of evidence to show that, well, at least what Aldous Huxley tell us, that happiness, according to atheists, was being able to chase down everything. It was basically to think with your D, as we discussed earlier. Now, these same words that are spoken by Baron Holbach, by Sam Harris or Sham Harris, by Dawkins, these ideas can be traced back very readily to pagan Greek philosophy, by sophists, by materialists, by mechanical believers, right? So understand, these ideas are not new. They are simply a repeat of pagan Greek ideas from more than 2,000 years ago. Now, of course, pagans, well, same thing. These pagan atheists will tell us that, well, Christianity is that's an old book. Why would we want to get ideas from an old book? Well, look, buddy, why would you want to get ideas from an even older book, right? From pagan Greeks, right? Seriously, these guys didn't even have microscopes. How scientific were they? So the New Testament, it's like old stuff. Why would you want to get ideas from an old book? Well, you guys are getting pagan ideas from even older books. I don't know. Maybe we need to toss your ideas out the door. So moving on. Beware the anti-atheist dictionary. So I'm at 83 of 81. I guess I did miss a couple. A history of the word, atheism, and the politics of dictionaries. Now, this is a very interesting article. This guy wrote a very funny article. It's actually quite good. Nathan Alexander details a history of the ways atheism has been defined in English dictionaries, as well as the ways that atheists have pushed back against negative definitions of atheism and influenced these definitions over time. How does one define atheism? For many, the answer might be to simply look it up in a dictionary. But then, how do dictionary makers know the definition of a word, and what makes them qualified to define words? That's why it's the Oxford Dictionary. That's why Oxford gives Austin a call. That's why. Dictionary makers are not godly beings who descend from the sky to instruct mere mortals like ourselves about the correct meaning of words. I think he's being facetious. I think he's just being deliberately facetious as he writes this. Rather, they are human beings with their own biases and commitments that inevitably inform their work. Even if this fact is uncontroversial, the authority, the dictionary, still looms over contemporary discussions about the meaning of words. That's interesting. The left constantly wants to redefine words, and atheists constantly want to redefine what atheism is, even though we all know what it means. So he says here, in English, the term atheism was adopted from the French athéisme in about 1587. The term atheist, in the sense of one who denies or disbelieves, predates atheism in English. So, in other words, we had denial in the French already, long before it was in English. It was denial of God. So, first attested in about 1571, and the Italian version is recorded as early as 1568. So, we've got, okay. So, here we go. So, in English in 1587, but in the Italian 68 and the French in 71. That's quite a while back. Nearly every dictionary from the 1600s up to the present defined atheism as a denial of God's existence or the proclamation that there is no God. By the way, Austin, do you know who makes proclamations? Prophets. So, the proclamation that there is no God. Okay, fine and well. I guess the dictionary agrees with me. What's wrong with this? The problem is that it puts the burden of proof on atheists to give a positive argument for why God did not exist. Oh my, the guy's being honest here. But proving that something does not exist is extremely difficult, perhaps impossibly so. This is why atheists sought to deny that they denied God's existence, because they couldn't change the dictionary, they had to try and change the meaning. So, your thoughts, Thaddeus? A history of the word atheism and the politics of dictionaries. So, yeah, source. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very humorous that this author he basically asserted that the dictionary is biased and it's intentionally written to make the atheist position difficult to defend. Or maybe the atheist position is just actually difficult to defend, and if people don't want to defend that position, then they should use a term that accurately describes their position, like non-theist or agnostic. But no, they want to have the atheist label for whatever reason. So since they want to have the label and they don't want to provide any evidence, then they just try to change the meaning of the term. Weird.
Exactly so. Yeah, exactly so. So understand. So look, atheists, it's just simply, you know what? I've had so many atheists come on and make comments and say things like, you spent a lot of time on research, you spent a lot of time on this video, but you know what? You still didn't prove that God exists. And I'm like, that wasn't the point of the discussion. Clearly you didn't watch it, or you still haven't proven God. I'm like, that wasn't the whole point of this discussion. We're looking into the history of atheism. We're looking into the etymology, the origin, the uses of the word atheism from dozens, nearly 60 sources. So yeah, now atheism, this is the final slide, by the way. Atheism is often merely a variety of Christianity. This is T.S. Eliot. By the way, everyone should know that T.S. Eliot is an anagram of toilets. So atheism is often merely a variety of Christianity. In fact, several varieties. There's the high church atheism of Matthew Arnold. There's the Old Licht atheism of our friend J.M. Robertson. There is the tin chapel atheism of Mr. D.H. Lawrence, and there's the decidedly low church atheism of Mr. Russell. And this is T.S. Eliot reviewing Bertrand Russell's Why I Am Not a Christian in 1927. So he was basically, he was calling Mr. Bertrand Russell an idiot. So, anywho, so I think this would be the final word, and then I'll hand over to Thaddeus again. So final word, go to the Inspiring Philosophy channel on YouTube and view the following video. What new atheists get wrong about history. This is a brilliant watch. It actually has an atheist on, and this atheist is very honest about history, and it's brilliant. It's called The Historical Blunders of the New Atheists, he discussed, and he talks about just how idiotic, when it comes to history, the new atheists are. The atheist author being interviewed in the channel describes the consequences of the atheist belief and worldview, and especially the false history offered by atheists and their famed leaders like Richard Dawkins. Because as you know, as atheists will let you know, every atheist has come on is like, that's not my scholar. That's not my scholar. That's just like Muslims, that's not my scholar, whatever. Atheists are exactly the same. So, Thaddeus, over to you.
Yeah, I bet you we have a comment later today saying, I don't know why you put in all this work. You could have just asked an atheist what atheism means, because that seems to be the typical comment we get. Either that or the comment along the lines of what you alluded to, where they say, this video didn't prove God exists. Well, you proved you didn't watch it because that wasn't the subject of the video.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not interested in that particular atheist view. We know what they're going to say. They're going to dance around, well, it's just a lack of belief, man. That's why there's this 400-page book which talks about how to argue for this lack of the psychological state. I mean, what a bunch of idiots. I'm sorry, but it's idiocy. I mean, that is idiocy. That is a lack of rationality. So guys, that's my talk on atheism wrapped up. And I'll open it up to questions, or if there's anything anyone wants to know, any questions you have. But look, I think, and also any question, guys, from anything you'd like to see. Also, for my subscribers, I need to do something, so I will plan a private chat, and I will have to get onto that as soon as possible. But yeah, we need to also plan next year. My next series is going to be on secular humanism. We're going to deconstruct the history of secular humanism, going back to the 1920s, up to the 1980s and 90s, and of course prior to that. But it's just more of the same idiocy. So yeah, Thaddeus, any thoughts from you?
That's all I have today. I'm looking forward to taking a look at the history of secular humanism next. We started by looking at kind of the history of socialism. That was very fascinating, lots of information that I never heard before. Then we got off on this tangent because atheists were coming in and telling us that we didn't know what atheism was, and thus we couldn't talk about it. So you went through 6 parts, probably 7 to 8 hours of looking at atheist after atheist who defines atheism academically. And now that we have a firm grip on what atheism is, even though we were correct from the beginning, but it's good to know we're correct. We now have all this atheist scholars backing us up. Now that we have that firm grip, let's take a dive into the religion of atheism, which is humanism. And atheists will say that they don't have a religion, but 95% of atheists are humanists, and it absolutely is a religion.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at that. So obviously I'm going to be doing a bunch of meandering as we go, of course. But secular humanism's founding, basically it only dates to 1928. Now that's not to say that humanism as ideas didn't exist prior, but it became this formal movement with the publishing of the Humanist Manifesto. And of course, you'd be you'd know atheists are just the cream of the earth. And you would be so happy to know that the world's premier abortionists, bunch of pedophiles, a bunch of inbreeders, a bunch of eugenicists all signed on to the Church of Humanism, onto the Humanist Manifesto. Some of the worst scum to ever live sign on to this. Of course, you're going to love to find out just the wonderful people that became humanists. And So, for instance, so in 1933, 34 humanists in the USA defined the philosophical and religious principles that were fundamental to them. And it is called the Humanist Manifesto 1, and it defined specifically religious humanism. And thank you very much, Righteous. I'm very grateful. Thank you. Everyone, please lobby Al-Fadi to have Lloyd present his monotheism series on Sarah International. Yeah, Al-Fadi does seem to get those messages. People do tell him, because apparently everyone spoke to Jay and everyone spoke to Al-Fadi, and Jay was just, I can't explain to you, just frustrating. But anyway, I might give Jay a call sometime. I might contact him again. Who knows? But just whatever. But anyway, they do actually get these messages. So yeah, if you want me to talk about monotheism, then yeah, by all means. So yeah, you also do need to know that all these eugenicists and abortionists, all of these people, Margaret Sanger, this, oh God, you're going to go into all the history of these people, all humanists, okay? All wonderful humanists. And we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff. And, they had these wonderful ideas that, in China, they got the one-child policy that, people weren't allowed and they got punished if they had more than one child. They were forced abortions. And he says here that abortion may be taken out of the voluntary category. The Planned Parenthood president says that population was equal to the threat of nuclear war, and we may have to not make it voluntary for people to have abortions. We might have to have the government force people to have abortions. And coercion may become necessary to reduce the birth rate. This is government coercion. So each country will have to decide its own form of coercion and decide and determine when and how it should be employed. This is the wonderful beauty of totalitarian atheism. This is what humanists believe. So Thaddeus, I'll end here with your thoughts on that.
Yeah, exciting preview there. I'm anxious to see what all you've come up with, but just on that last point there, we don't have to look to the theoretical. China did exactly that. They instituted this one-child policy, and if a woman got pregnant and she already had a child, they made her abort the baby. And this is not theoretical at all. This is the real world.
Yeah. So yeah. But anyway, we're going to discover. So Ultra says, I'm an atheist and a humanist. I can easily say that there are absolute scuzz buckets that also identifies as, oh man, there's an endless list of scuzz buckets that identify as atheists. It doesn't mean that I'm not one of our planet's most moral and ethical people. Certainly, you can be ethical. This is not something that we've argued about. But understand that when it comes to having political power, atheism has always, without exception, been violent, murderous, genocidal, and totalitarian. Anytime atheists have had political power, they have been the worst, the absolute most violent, immoral, evil people to exist. So he never returns and says, I'm absolutely gutted that the modernist Jesuits who have taken over the church are pushing for Moloch ritual, and yeah, man, there's a problem in the Catholic Church. But look, this is not to say that there aren't some serious problems in the Protestant Church too. Gnosticism has certainly infected the Protestant Church, and don't forget that the communists made every effort to invade the Catholic Church, as well as Protestant churches, but especially the Catholic Church. Now, understand the communists were very proud of the fact that if they could get just 1% of the people in a group to be communists, they could take over that group and completely derail it. This is part of their doctrine. So who knows what's been going on. Most atheists are moral, but no atheists have an objective basis for their morality. Correct, they steal from God. They steal from Christian morality and then claim that they're moral. But of course, if you look at like the 1960s atheists like Derrida and so on, look at these guys, Foucault, they were all freaking pedophiles. All of them wanted pedophilia made legal. All of them wanted to lower the age of consent to, I don't know, down to diaper age. So yeah, that just complete scum. Okay, guys, so we should end it here. So guys, we should end here. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for the donations. I do appreciate it. So I will have my talk on humanism coming up on Thursday. So yeah, we're going to be doing we're going to be pulling a bunch of threads together as I typically do, and of course I am going to eventually, slightly later within the presentation, go into specifically the statements of the founders of modern humanism, And they will tell you quite explicitly, quite bluntly, secular humanism is a religion. It was founded explicitly as a religion to compete with Christianity. And in fact, it is stripped down, plagiarized Christianity. So they basically copied Christian belief to make a religion. And this is not speculation. This is their own words. So, yeah. Okay, so guys, thank you very much. We're going to look at the religion of secular humanism, which is a religion to replace Christianity. So, Austin, you're clearly dumber than a bag of rocks. Clearly, you're dumber than an absolute complete bag of rocks. So, I mean, sorry, at what point are you just stupid? Right? Seriously, at what point do I just have to deem you to be irredeemably stupid? The founders of humanism. Now, you can feel free to prove me wrong, make a video, whatever. You can feel free. The evidence is objectively clear. It is unambiguous. It is unassailable. Secular humanism was founded explicitly and specifically as a religion. It is a religion. It went to the High Court in the United States to defend its right to be called validly a religion. Okay? And not just on that basis, it was begun, its own founders state bluntly, dozens of them, it's religious, it's a religion. So stop being, to coin a phrase here, stop being stupid. Anyway, thank you guys. So good night. Thank you for the time. And were the Nazis atheists? Not really. Some might have been, but no. I would say they kind of had certain kinds of weird religious views. I do have a presentation prepped on that, on the beliefs of Hitler and the Nazis. So yeah, once I finish the one on secular humanism, then I can do one of those on the Nazis, what the Nazis believed. So I do have that ready. I do have the research done. I just need to start putting it all into, onto the slides. But I've already started the outline. There's already work there in progress. So I'll get to that in the future. Thaddeus, last word to you. I need to shut up.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to say anything because then you might continue the stream.
Sorry.
But no, it was a pleasure being on today. And I don't mind you going over at all. It's just funny when you say, we're ending and then we don't. But it was a pleasure being on today. It's always good to see your research. It's a pleasure to interact with it. I encourage everyone to support Lloyd in whatever way you can. Give the video a like, share it with friends, share it on social media, support him financially if you're capable. And of course, if you are a Christian, please pray for us both as well.
Thank you, yeah.
Because Lloyd is the one doing the hard work here. I'm just coming and sharing my thoughts.
Yeah. So guys, thank you. I mean, look, I say a lot of blunt things, but you see, I do provide the research. I do provide the evidence. So I know when I'm right because I've got the facts to back me up. So I didn't just go and check on Wikipedia, and I didn't consult my opinion and just blurt it out. So thank you guys. Have a good night. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. Have a wonderful Christmas period. And of course, have a wonderful New Year. But I'll see you guys on Thursday. And thank you, Thaddeus, for joining me again. I really do appreciate your input. And Thaddeus called me the best researcher he knows. That's very high praise, and I do appreciate that. In fact, Saint Murad said something very similar recently. He said he commended my work that I've been doing. So really, so thanks, guys. Again, appreciate your very kind words, Thaddeus. So please do support his channel as well, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care, guys. Good night, and God bless.